if you listen to my daily financial news for December 18th, I kind of opened the show talking about the current real estate market being one of great frustration. We are operating in an environment where inventory is roughly half where it should be. We are operating in an environment where interest rates are moving violently, causing behaviors to change. We have lots of competition. We have millennials becoming buyers. We have baby boomers doing this and that. And it's just a wild and frustrating market. So I thought I would have a conversation with Dion and talk about what do we think's holding most people back today. Dion, you're the guest. I'll let you go first.
Well, so I've got a couple of examples. I'm sure we will go back and forth a bit on that, but there's a video I'm making pretty soon that I think is probably not talked about often, but this is the biggest thing that holds people back.
Mm.
And I don't often make racist statements, but I'm going to make this because it's my own race.
Oh, okay.
Irish Alzheimer's is holding people back. This is the thing stopping people in their tracks. So in an Irish family, like the McNeelys, nobody remembers going to tow a car out of the ditch, going to see somebody in the hospital, being there for a birth of a family member or a wedding. We remember that thing you said at Thanksgiving. We remember you dated the girl I wanted to date 5 years ago, and those grudges last decades. This is how people look at investing. You have Irish Alzheimer's. There has never been a point in our lives, we're close to the same age, I'm a little bit older, but there's never been a year in our lives where everybody was saying, man, this is the time to buy real estate.
Yeah.
We have that Irish Alzheimer's. Everybody's like, there was a housing crash. There was going to be a double dip recession. Home prices are above 2008, so it's unsustainable. There's a silver tsunami coming. Home interest rates in 2018 went above 6%. Then we had a pandemic, an eviction moratorium, forbearance. Nobody remembers as often. They'll say, oh, there was a 30% crash in March of 2020. And then a record recovery, like a rapid growth. We remember the negatives. And so when we look back, we can always think, okay, there's been times where we shouldn't have bought, but had you bought then, it would have been great. Right now is the negative. What Crash Bro video? What news article or commercial did you see about the impending crash, the impending recession? Right now it's a bunch of people making videos off and using these words. And so I'm going to do one too. Worse than a recession, because Robert Kiyosaki, a bigger channel, did a video on this is going to be worse than a recession. So what's my take on what would be worse than a recession? It's kind of the trending thing right now, but that's what people are stuck on. What negative thing happening right now gives me an excuse not to take action?
Yeah. So first off, I've never heard of Irish Alzheimer. That's kind of funny because my mother's Fitzpatrick. So I guess I could use that as well. But you're so right. I interact on Twitter or X, a couple of times today, and you shouldn't go there unless you love hate. It is full of hate and disgusting and idiots and clowns. I can't tell you how many people have replied with some iteration of it's just like '08. And I'm like, really? Lending is just like '08? High leverage is just like '08? 51% of loans written are ARMs? Really? Just like '08? I mean, like nothing has changed? Or better yet, there are still people calling for a 20% crash in a year. That is so outside the realm of possibilities as to be ludicrous. The worst year ever was negative 8.9%. And you think you're going to do that times 150%? And they all are following and watching the same couple of three idiots. And they use the same charts. Like the favorite chart that I see out there is incomes to home prices. And if you look at that chart, it's wild. It's crazy. But there's like a really key variable missing called interest rates, because it's not about incomes and home prices. How many of you pay cash for your home? If you were doing an income to home price comparison, you should only look at the people paying cash. Homes are bought with debt. So if you're going to do an honest comparison, you would include interest rates, aka affordability. Now, granted, today affordability is bad, granted, but the reason I have a problem with that chart is it gave people permission in 2020 not to buy. 2020 was the second best year in the last 53 years to buy. So if you were following an idiot and a moron and a clown who told you not to buy in 2020 because incomes to price was abnormally high, he doesn't understand math. 2020 was the second best, and 2021 was the third best year ever to buy a home. In today's world, with social media, there are people making $80,000 a month producing half-baked theories, garbage, and now lies. Did you see this lie recently? There was somebody ranting, and it had 1 million views, over 1 million views. Wall Street owns 40% of all single-family homes. That is such a lie. They're lying to you now. They've been trying to talk about a crash for 12 years, and now they're just lying. It's wild.
So I actually didn't see that because I've blocked all of the Doomer videos.
Oh, you're so good. You're so good.
But I sent you an image, and I don't know if I kept it here. Yes, who owns all single family homes?
Yep.
Wall Street, it's 1.6%.
Yeah. So
80%,
like 1.6 is below 40, right? I'm just checking.
Right, and 80%, which means there's not 40% left, is owned by mom and pops.
Yeah. Mom and pop defined as owning less than 10 units. Yeah, it's wild. So one of the things, well, let's just talk about worse than a recession, because you're right. I think Robert Kiyosaki is really pushing this. And again, on Twitter, there's a couple of people that have posted all the Robert Kiyosaki calls because he's been calling worse than a recession forever. So worse than a recession, obviously, is a depression, or maybe there's something worse than a depression. We've had one, right? The Great Depression. And you have to really think about what that all really means. What would worse than a recession mean? Probably 20% unemployment. Probably negative GDP of 5 or 6%. It's pretty wild to think about. And oh, by the way, we know the playbook. If we haven't learned by now, we know what the playbook is. If the government, the powers that be, see a nasty recession coming, just go watch March of 2020 and see what happened.
So, if you don't mind, I'm gonna take a track from a teacher.
Go for it.
The best way to make knowledge retainable is to posit a theory, let a person think of what the theory is, and then explain something from left field. Okay. That shift in topics is what does it. And in case it's too off topic, I'll blame it on the water that makes your eyes water.
It's a little early, Dion, a little early.
You can't drink all day unless you start early.
There you go.
Thank you, Dan Pitchler. So here's what's worse than a recession. Now Robert Kiyosaki talked about, like he's 15 years of the world is ending, right? And buy gold and silver and like, it's ammunition and food, right? That's my thing. But
yeah,
here's what's worse than a recession. And it's worse than a recession every year, every single year, whether there's a recession, depression, or boom, bear, bull, doesn't matter what's coming. Mm-hmm. This is worse than a recession because, and some people hopefully know this word, people are more solipsistic than they think. Most of us think from our own perspective, we're the only real thing. We don't want to see our neighbors suffer, but if they do, how does that actually impact us? This is worse than a recession. If you were the type of person who your only source of income is your W-2, selling your life 1 hour at a time. We didn't have a recession for the last 2 years. We borderline a couple of matrix came close, but we didn't, right? But the tech industry laid off. Significant layoffs in tech, right? But which only represents 12% of the workforce. So it didn't impact numbers large enough to make it a recession. But if you work in tech, did a recession happening matter? No. What happened to you mattered. So worse than a recession is somebody whose only way of making money is selling their life 1 hour at a time, because what are you going to do when nobody's buying? or your skill set goes away, right?
Yeah.
Whether it's Uber or Lyft disrupting the taxi industry, whether it's AI starting to learn how to code, or it's AI scripting YouTube videos, making fake models that don't even exist that make $11,000 a day on whatever platform. If people don't figure out how to make money from multiple sources, or sources that are hedge against inflation, diversified in different ways, I think recession, depression, or boom doesn't matter if your one source of income goes away. So at any point in your life, and I want to be really clear when I say this, because I spent the weekend with family. My favorite thing. I'm financially free. I'm retired. One of my brothers is, but not many else. No one else in my family is even investing, right? And I often have to say, remember, whenever I talk about money, I made it to 40 without ever really having $1,000 in the bank, right? Found out about $89,000 in debt in my name I didn't know existed, right? So I'm not like, I've lived my entire life under this financial rule set that has rewarded me. I started late, I learned late, I took action late, and it took a decade to get where I'm at. So when I say things like, if your sole source of income is your job, I'm not saying you're making a mistake. I'm saying this is the day you wake up. Because there was a day I woke up and I thought, because my pensions kept getting taken away. There has to be a way to build my own pension. And how is that? Sources of income that don't come from my job.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. Worse than recession it really is a personal thing. There's a saying that I've quoted a couple of times, the difference between a recession and a depression, right? A recession is when your neighbor is laid off. A depression is when you're laid off. And again, if you're working the 40-40 life, 40 hours for 40 years, live on 40%, you can get let go on a moment's notice and your entire world is put to shambles. So again, back to video number 1, shut up and wait. Do yourself a favor, look yourself in the mirror this holiday season, take some action, put some things in place, and then shut up and wait. Dion, where can people find you?
Right here on YouTube, Dion Talk Financial Freedom, where I do my live streams every Tuesday at 4 p.m. Pacific, where you can come and tell me to shut up and wait.
Yeah. Thank you, buddy.